Foreign predatory parasitic corporations are replacing our natural environment with an industrial landscape of wind turbines. One Nation will stand against sending children down a path of drug dependency and body mutilation to appease the gender cult. Leave our kids alone. The Trusted Digital Identity Bill is a global surveillance and control mechanism that profit-hungry corporations and power-mad politicians drafted and crafted. One Nation opposes this inhuman, dystopian future that the United Nations promotes as the Great Reset, and we condemn this Parliament for signing onto it. I called for Australia to reject the World Economic Forum's Great Reset and instead mount a great resist. Just like the koalas being euthanized to make way for wind turbines or damaged solar panels leaking toxic heavy metals into waterways, the United Nations net zero plan again involves killing the environment to save it. I've been speaking about the fear, the oppression and the inhuman cruelty of our COVID response since July 2020. I promised to hound down those responsible, and I will continue relentlessly to keep that promise. You're about to be live with me, Senator Malcolm Roberts. Hi, this is Senator Malcolm Roberts in Brisbane doing the live stream. It's our first live stream for 2026, actually, and our first for a long time because I was out of the office quite a bit. In fact, one of the last live stream we did wasn't a Friday live stream, it was a Wednesday live stream, just to try and fit it in. I've just come back from America where I had my first family break in a long time. So my wife and I really enjoyed it. We did bugger all, enjoyed our family. We took both our children over there, their families, and our grandson. So we really had a good time. Bloody cold though. We've got a lot to cover today, so it's going to be flat out. I've done a lot of preparation, a lot of notes for you, so we can cover things comprehensively because we're going to talk about the bill that should be called Hiding Out Anthony Albanese, scapegoating the citizens of Australia, legal citizens of Australia. Anyway, we'll start with our hero shout out. Wade Northhausen, Billboard Battalion. He had a stroke, apparently. He does marvelous work. He's been publicly involved in politics as a citizen, doing his duty, holding us accountable. Good bloke. He's got a team of people around him. He's informed, he's energetic, he's direct. I love him because he just says exactly what he thinks. And if he disagrees with you, he tells you. And if you disagree with him, he loves it when we tell him. So Wade, we wish you a very speedy recovery and a complete recovery. And please, everyone, pray for Wade. He's doing a marvelous job, so please pray for Wade. We're going to have a competition today, later in the show, to see who first recognizes and names an ideology that I describe. So that'll be fairly simple, I think. Most people would know it. And yes, we are discussing Labor's horrendous big news censorship bill, the Hiding Albanese and Scapegoating Innocent Citizens Bill 2026. First, just to catch up on and recap, I was overseas when the Bondi massacre occurred. 15 Australians murdered in cold blood in a safe, in what should be a safe environment. So I send my condolences to the victims' families, friends, workmates, colleagues, anybody who knew them. And also my condolences to Australia. We've had 15 Australians killed. Okay, they were of a particular faith, but they're Australians. Number one, they're Australians. And the people who died, I'm sure, would consider themselves to be Australian first and Jewish second. So there's the Australians of Jewish faith, and that's horrendous. So we've had 15 Australians killed, and I'll be talking more about that later. It was significant that at Bondi, on a memorial service, Australians booed Anthony Albanese, the Prime Minister, because they saw that he was two-faced. He enabled the shootings. He was culpable for the shootings. He did nothing against Islamic extremism, and he was culpable all along in turning a blind eye to the anti-Semitic demonstrations that occurred in Sydney and elsewhere. He just didn't do anything, and neither did the New South Wales Premier. They just did not enforce the law. And the Greens are culpable too, because they encourage these demonstrators. They encourage anti-Semitism. They encourage anti-Israeli sentiments. Whether you agree with Israel or not, and there's a lot of people inside Israel who don't agree with their own government. So let's be very, very clear about that. The Jewish people deserve to live and deserve to live in peace. Anthony Albanese then denied the Royal Commission. denied it repeatedly, stopped it, avoided it, prevented it. And then he got swamped by the massive public pressure. Now, I was watching all of this from overseas. I was stunned. And then he capitulated and and agreed to having a royal commission. And then he came out and said, in record time. That's the standard of this man, putting facades up to cover his negligence, his dishonesty. We're going through floods in North Queensland, horrific floods, and in central Queensland now. But hey, there are people doing it really hard, suffering under the floods. I think we might have had, no, we haven't had a fatality yet, but we have had serious disruption to industry, to small businesses, to farms, and the whole region, North and Central Queensland. It's trite to say this happens in Australia, but that is the reality. It happens in Australia, but we still need to help the people, and we need to put in place whatever protection measures we can in future. Dams, for example, better infrastructure. And we've got fires in Victoria. One person dead in Victoria. You know, my wife and I, we live on acreage in the western suburbs of Brisbane, and we've got a lot of bush around. That's our choice, but we don't have the dry heat and the dry vegetation that Victorians have at this time of year. So our thoughts are with you all in Victoria. It's something that happens in Australian bush, but that doesn't make it any easier. And we've had Sydney heat waves. 1880s and 1890s were far hotter than today, using the actual Bureau of Meteorology's measurements. And the heat waves were longer, more common, and hotter. So it's just a part of being in Australia. So we've got to be careful where we live and how we live in this country, just like every country. So it's not just the terrorists that pose challenges. And then we've got our own government posing challenges with travel routes. I watched this from overseas as well. And they didn't tell us that Annika Wells's travel was approved under new rules, Anthony Albanese's new rules. Did they pass the pub test? I'll bet most people in Australia, looking at the reaction in the media and social media, most people in Australia do not think that Anthony Albanese is passing the pub test on travel routes. That leads us to government waste. Direct waste from the bureaucratic waste of money, the spending, the negligence in the spending, the low accountability. The indirect waste, failures of implementation, inefficiency, duplication, and poor policy. Look at energy, how much money a business is wasting directly and indirectly there, and consumers. Tax, a screwed up tax system, education system, ceding sovereignty in so many areas to overseas agencies that are not elected and that were never requested in an election to be accountable and to put forward their policies. But still, the Labor Party and Liberal Uni Party have been putting these policies forward and causing extra cost and waste to the people of Australia. And the waste in lies, the poor governance, not making decisions based on data. And then the waste in following a woke agenda, DEI, ESG, UN WEF, SDG. So that's diversity, equity, and inclusion. We've got environment, sustainability, and governance. We've got SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals. And these all spread into businesses and destroy businesses and make them less profitable and increase the prices for consumers. And it's interesting to note that BlackRock has recently pulled out of ESG. They were the ones championing it. Now they're pulled out of it. One Nation and the polls are doing remarkably well. It's true that we are the real opposition. I'll explain that later further. I've claimed that ever since about September last year. Why? Because we're serving Australia and we dare to speak. We actually dare to speak the reality, the truth, because we listen to the people. We're now a very mature party and we're setting the agenda in many, many ways across many, many areas of policy. I want to welcome Barnaby Joyce. He's been a former Deputy Prime Minister. He's got 20 years experience in the Senate and the House of Representatives. He's been in government. He's been in opposition. He really knows his way around. And he's a really, intelligent guy, a very direct guy, very funny guy, and very serious, so at the same time. So what's really encouraging to see with the polls is that people are waking up to the Uni Party, the Liberal Labor uni party that have been in power for about 70, well, since the Liberal Party formed in the 50s. So it's wonderful to see that the uni party, people are waking up to the uni party. And I contacted an old friend of mine yesterday, and he said he thought he would never live to see the demise of the uni party as a possibility, but he's now smiling and looking at it and welcoming it. One Nation, I want to assure everyone, is not focused on polling. We're not focused on polling. We're focused on serving. That means listening, being out with the people. That means coming up with good policies, and that's the key to our skyrocketing polls. The policies we've come up with, and the fact that Pauline Hanson, for 30 years, almost 30 years, has been saying the things that people want to say themselves, but have not been game to say. And she's been the odd one out, but she's been in tune the whole time. And then we've got James Ashby in our party, who's doing a marvelous job of building the party and putting it on the map in the media. And we've got a wonderful team in my office that's been developing policies and put them out there. And now we've got governance and accountability issues that we're challenging the government on. Speaking of challenging the government on accountability, Anthony Albanese is on the slide. Who would have thought it just within months? But last May, after the election, he was on cloud nine. He had so much political capital, as the people in politics talk about. It's bullshit. But anyway, political capital. He had it all. And now he's got bugger all of it. His credibility is smashed. And he initiated the smashing of his own credibility. It's his own fault, his own responsibility. He's destroyed his political capital. He tries to control opponents. He's cut our staff, sacked one of the people in my own office, tried to, and then he's controlling opponents. Strong people make sure their opponents are strong because it strengthens themselves, because it stimulates debate. Anthony Albanese runs from people who challenge him. He's weak. He's dishonest. He covers things up. He hides. He's gutless. And he got a very incompetent government. Look at Minister Watt, for example. In Senate estimates, I asked him questions on 2 different topics. He spliced the answers that I gave, the questions I gave, and the answers he gave on 2 separate topics together to make it look like I was doing something wrong. That's horrific. That is deliberately done to mislead. You'll see more about that coming up. The government won't take responsibility. And just as a precursor to my longer topic today, they want to ban gel blasters, regulated toys. They want to ban gel blasters. So let's hold him accountable on a key issue, and that's the Combating Anti-Semitism, Hate and Extremism Bill. It's a lie. The title of this bill is a lie. It's the big censorship bill, the guns control bill, which does neither and scapegoats law-abiding citizens. We had a meeting of our advisors who are varied in age, but we've got 2 excellent barristers, one in Pauline's office and one in my office, and they are stunned by this bill. We've also got some very bright young advisors, some experienced middle-aged advisors, lawyers, people with varied ages, backgrounds, everyday Aussies, not party hacks who've risen through the ranks based on seniority. And what's more, in our party, the advisors are free to speak up in our party meetings because they're expected to speak up, because senior people, the senators, expect to be corrected. Why? Because if we've got a bunch of nodders around us, then we'll walk blinded into an ambush. So we can't afford that. We like debate. We like to show a difference of opinion and on positions. But yesterday, it was just stunning to see these 2 barristers and the others in the team coming up with so many things that are wrong about this Combating Anti-Semitism, Hate and Extremism bill. So I'll say that again. Combating anti-Semitism, it doesn't do that. Combating hate, it doesn't do that. It gives guidelines for people to be hateful. And combating extremism, it lays not a glove on extremism. Now, we support and serve and work for all Australians, Buddhists, atheists, agnostics, Hindu, Christian, Baha'i, Muslim, Jew, Sikh, people of no faith, Mormons, Jehovah's Witnesses. It doesn't matter so long as they're Australians. And by the way, if some of those are not faiths, then please accept my regrets. That's what I consider them to be. Before I get into the topic of this combating anti-Semitism, hate, and extremism bill, I want to note to peaceful Muslims. It's important to remember that globally, Muslims are the biggest victims of Islamic terror. Historically, 80 to 90% of Islamic terror attacks take place in Muslim majority countries. It's the Muslims who suffer from this the most. And of course, there are millions of Christian deaths at the hands of Islam as well. The sizable number, but it's less than Muslim victims. Now, those Muslims who sought refuge here in Australia must be extremely concerned that the Prime Minister cannot even bring himself to name Islamic terror in the new bill, nor in public, cannot name Islamic terror. But it's bloody obvious. Everyone in Australia knows. We have 800,000 Muslims in Australia, and mostly law-abiding. Mostly law-abiding. I've got a friend, Michael, who's really strong on being Australian and valuing Australia. He says that he's worked with Muslims, and they're fine to work with. In fact, Muslims have been in this country 200 years. Afghans were brought here, Muslim Afghans were brought here with camels a couple of hundred years ago. Sensible Muslims, like those around the world, oppose Islam. Sensible Muslims oppose Islam. And what's more is many Muslims are conservative on families, conservative on gender, conservative on sexuality. They join One Nation because we're the only ones that are conservative on those and other issues. So I acknowledge these points to ensure accuracy and fairness. And it's the truth. And remember, as one of my staff pointed out today, our staff team pointed out, a Muslim wrestled the bloody gun off a Bondi shooter that was murdering Australians, innocent Australians. That same Muslim saved lives in doing so. He also likes Trump, and who also speaks strongly against Islam. Good Muslims, Australian citizens, Australian Muslims, speak strongly against Islam. I've talked to many of them. Muslim nations do not shield Islamic terror. Unlike our Prime Minister, our opposition leader, past Prime Ministers, Muslim nations do not shield Islamic terror. It's been reported in the media for many, many months, and in fact years, that the Palestinian refugees are not accepted and not allowed into many Arab and Middle Eastern countries. Muslim nations do not shield Islamic terror. They call it out for what it is. They name it, unlike Anthony Albanese, who refuses to even utter the word. Not naming it certainly doesn't keep anyone safer. In fact, it makes our country unsafe when you have a gutless Prime Minister. Look, the number one person in this country responsible for the security and defense of Australia is the Prime Minister. If he's weak, and we have got a weak one at the moment, then the terrorists know it, and that brings us trouble. Look, for example, at the United Arab Emirates. In a major story this week, the United Arab Emirates removed the United Kingdom from its university scholarship program because of, quote, and I'll quote this, anxiety in the United Arab Emirates over what it sees as the risk of Islamic radicalization on UK campuses. They won't send their Arab sons and daughters to British universities because they could get radicalized. In Britain, but that's the sad state in which Britain is today. And that's what we've got to face. We've got to call it out for what it is. We've got the Islamization of Britain. The Emiratis don't want their kids to be radicalized on campus. A Muslim nation afraid of Islamic radicalization in what is supposed to be the heart of Western civilization, the British Empire, heart of Western civilization, has been swamped and has fallen. And the United Arab Emirates is taking it seriously because primary role is keeping citizens safe. That's every government's number one role, to keep the citizens safe. How long before Australia falls into the same position as Britain because the Prime Minister is too gutless to name Islamic terror, repeatedly avoids it, repeatedly runs away from it? Now, the Combating Anti-Semitism, Hate and Extremism Bill, which I believe should be renamed the Combating Islamic Terror and Hate Breaches Bill. start again, combating Islamic terror and hate preachers bill. I want Anthony Albanese to start again. Now, how old is this bill? How long has it been around? How long has it been festering and being developed? Was this enormous bill, and it is enormous, and it's a mess, a complete dog's breakfast. Was this enormous bill really put together in a few short months following the Bondi, few short weeks, really, since the Bondi terror attack? No. Or was it, as some have alleged, written much earlier, and Bondi was simply an excuse to table it? We've heard rumors of a national cabinet meeting discussing gun control the day before the Bondi massacre. Was this bill perhaps put together as part of the appointment of the Special Envoy to combat Islamophobia and the Special Envoy to combat anti-Semitism, precursors to the bill? Was it meant to be put forward as a culmination of their 3 years' work and over $10 million worth of taxpayer money? Or was it drafted even earlier, maybe as early as 2019 in the Scott Morrison era, following the UN Strategy and Plan of Action on Hate Speech, so that's a very interesting question. And I must say, we'll be chasing the answer on that. And I think Scott Morrison signed a UN agreement or treaty. We'll have to get into this around that time. So I wonder if it's a commitment to do something for the United Nations, because the United Nations has been pushing this agenda. If it was not drafted in response to the Bondi terror attack, why was it written? If it's not trying to solve the problem of Islamic terror, and it's not, what is its purpose? General censorship? Well, I'll get into the breadth of it in a minute. Is that why the Greens are trying to expand it now to cover groups and ideas that have nothing to do with Islamic terror nor anti-Semitism? And more importantly, if the public know the bill has nothing to do with Bondi, would they support it? Would they support it? That's what transparency means. Being completely open about the source of the bill and the process that built the bill. It wasn't built in a few weeks, although it's certainly messy enough to be that way. If this bill is older than December 2025, then the Prime Minister must disclose it and reveal the original authors. Did his team write it, or did they amend something dusted off from the Liberal government, just as they did with the online safety bills, the digital ID, the misinformation and disinformation bill, the identity verification bill, the under-16 internet ban, all initiated in the Morrison era under the Liberal National Coalition government. And the ones that I think Liberals introduced one, the rest were introduced by the Labor Party. So it's clear that combating anti-Semitism, hate, and extremism bill was written on the time frame we have been given. The bill and explanatory memorandum is 500 pages. There is months of work in a bill like that. Months of work. Some commentators are suggesting it was written when the special envoys on anti-Semitism, as I said, anti-Semitism, on Islamophobia, the special envoys on anti-Semitism and the special envoy on Islamophobia were appointed. Others point to the Morrison government signing the United Nations Strategy and Plan of Action in the Hate Speech 2019. Nobody is saying, although One Nation will be making inquiries, it's important to know who really wrote this legislation and why the hell they did it, because it is a mess. I read the bill and making some notes on. The key issues: safety of Australians, not cared about in this bill. Islam extremism, especially Islamic extremism, not mentioned, not dealt with, not prevented. Anthony Albanese himself, could you bring that note back down? Yep, that's it. And immigration. So safety of Australians, Islamic extremism, Albanese's performance as Prime Minister on security and immigration. This bill is a cover-up. It's a diversion. The government's number one role is safety and security. Labor has failed. Weak leaders and enabled or supported Islamic breaches on protests. People in pro-Palestinian marches have violated the law repeatedly, and nothing has been done about it. I'll talk more about the source of laws that are available to us already. They've incited violence against Jews in the Islamic protests. The existing laws are adequate to stop hate and violence, but they're not enforced. They're not abided by. They're not enforced. The definition of hate crimes is very, very weak. We have laws against hurting, attacking, threatening people already, but they're not implemented. Now, this is an omnibus bill, which means it's two bills on separate topics merged into one. Why? To wedge politicians, to wedge the Liberal Party, to wedge the National Party, to wedge the Greens. This is a politically motivated exercise. It's a ruthless, politically motivated censorship against Australians, and specifically against conservative Australians, and it will not stop a single Islamic terror attack. Now, these are my notes. I'll read that part again. It's a ruthless, politically motivated censorship against Australians, all Australians, and especially conservative Australians, and it will not stop a single Islamic terrorist attack. It fails to root out those who do not support Western democracy and freedom. It avoids mentioning extremist Islamic fundamentalists, primarily responsible for hate speech, anti-Semitism, and atrocities. They're the culprits. They're not mentioned. Now, I must make a point. Not all Muslims are terrorists, yet most terrorists are Muslim, Islamic. The focus is on, in the bill, is on race, nationality, ethnicity. It ignores Islamic teachings. In fact, and exempts them from having to stop hate preaching. People can quote from the Quran instructions to take action against infidels who don't believe in Islam, and they can talk about the context around those quotes. They can do hate preach. In fact, one of my staff said, and I agree with him, the new bill is almost a guideline on how to continue hate speech from Islamic extremists. I was going to quote 3 quotes from the Quran to you, but my staff this morning told me that would ban me from 3 platforms, one of them being YouTube. Banned for quoting from the Quran? This bill is a rushed mess. It's had 2 days scrutiny in committee. One of the committee witnesses, admitted that there's been no consultation. The wording is vague. It won't stop anti-Semitism. There's no protection for Christians, no protection for Muslims, men or women, or followers of other faiths. Only Sikhs and Jews, as one witness told us in the inquiry, are protected. They're very real issues. By the way, Anthony Albanese, as I've already said, was booed at Bondi. His weakness is that enabled the massacre. The tide has changed for him, bringing his own decline and defeat. His weakness, his incompetence, his gutlessness, his dishonesty. The bill is a facade. It's to say, look over there, not at Anthony Albanese's culpability for the lapse in security. Cover up his denial of the Royal Commission. And then, look, when you enact Parliament, when you enact a bill, legislation, to prevent something happening again, you do the inquiry into to find out the root causes. Then, when you've got the data, you make the legislation. What he's doing is he's putting forward a bill, a dog of a bill, and before the Royal Commission's even started the hearing. Now, what he did was deny repeatedly, as I said, the need for a Royal Commission. Then when forced, he's claiming record speed in making a decision for a Royal Commission. He's playing politics with the Bondi massacre deaths, their families, their survivors. This is abhorrent. Constitutional challenges are brewing. Wait and consider it after the Royal Commission. Wait. Just don't put the bill in place now. Consider it after the Royal Commission. This bill puts us on the same censorship path as the United Kingdom, Great Britain. Anthony Albanese, in my opinion, is parallel to Keir Starmer. I have no confidence, and our advisors have no confidence, that Labor will enforce the new law, especially against Islam. It's so broad in scope, it includes ministerial powers and discretions that are expanded to capture and silence political enemies. Yet its loopholes make it light on accountability and look after ministers. Look, they've already banned the lovely Candace Owens from coming down here. She's no threat to Australia. They've banned a South African Nazi with a tattoo, apparently, excluded already. So they can do it. They've shown they can do it. An early introduction, this in my opinion, some of our advisors agree, is an early introduction of the provisions of the Misinformation and Disinformation Censorship Bill. It's conditioning people. And it's also runs hand in hand with the suite of 5, the digital ID, Misinformation, Disinformation Bill, the under-16 internet ban, and the other controls they put on speech. The bill can be used to stop legitimate criticism, to stop free speech. It is against free speech. Albo is failing at preventing other future attacks. That is the main purpose of the bill, supposedly, but it's failing at that. It can't do it. Now, we move on to the Liberal Party, because the Liberals at first dithered. They didn't know what to do. Well, will they support it? Won't they support it? Then there's a division opening up in the Liberal Party. And then Pauline Hanson came out and said, we will be opposing this bill. I came out and said, we will be opposing this bill. I came out and said, sorry. So I said, it's a horrendous bill. And then the Liberals suddenly said they'd oppose it. The Nationals, on the anti-Semitism aspects, were undecided. Maybe, maybe not. They're opposed to the guns measures. That's good. But they're divided on the anti-Semitism. And the Liberals divided on the anti-Semitism. So the Liberals are following the only true leader of the opposition in this country, and that's Pauline Hanson. She's not afraid to say what she thinks. And the Greens, the despicable Greens, they're complicit in the anti-Semitic calls in this country. They've been stirring up anti-Semitism. The Greens on this bill are quiet. They're very quiet. Why are they quiet? Because they know it's a dog of a bill, but they want to get some things. So my guess is that they'll have one of 3 strategies, which I'll share with you in a minute. But they want to lay low, so they emerge from this quietly when the vote comes, jump ship, vote with Albanese, and push the bill through, and then quietly disappear 2 years before the next election. The Greens have been saying the phrase, from the river to the sea. Will that lead to charges? From the river to the sea means wiping out every Israeli in between. If they say that again after this bill comes through, will that lead to charges? So maybe they're genuinely worried. But they want, at the moment, they're doing their usual trick. We can't support it in its current form. So what they're hanging out for, my guess, is to expand censorship to include LGBTQI and people suffering from gender dysphoria, trans, in other words. So that's their aim, could be their aim. Or they might split the bill, help Labor pass the gun laws so that Labor can save some face and not pass the anti-Semitic provisions, combating anti-Semitic provisions. I want to mention 2 quotes, and I think I got these from someone on Facebook in response to one of my posts. First quote: social cohesion doesn't occur under social coercion. So true, so wise. Social cohesion doesn't occur under social coercion. And the second quote: anyone who wants to ban free speech has a lot to hide. Anthony Albanese's got a lot to hide. One Nation is Australia's champions for free speech for almost 30 years. One Nation has been warning about Islam for many, many years, more than a decade. One Nation is setting the agenda, has been setting the agenda since before the election. Australians want leadership coming strongly. One Nation is the true opposition party. Pauline Hanson is now effectively leading the opposition, and others are following her. Some other specific points. This bill removes procedural fairness, one of the tenets of the legal system. There's a high likelihood in the bill of unintended consequences. Rather than implement this bill, I think we should be repealing Section 18C of Australia's Racial Discrimination Act 1975, which prohibits acts likely to offend, insult, humiliate, or intimidate on basis of race. When you stop people speaking, it weakens others. It weakens the whole of society. Look, you can call me an insult. You cannot give offense, though. I can only take offense. I can be offended at what you say, but that's my choice. If I'm offended at what you say, it means I believe partly in what you say. So what it does, it creates victims of people. 18C creates victims of people. It stops healthy, vigorous debate. When someone speaks, we learn about the speaker, not about who they're talking about. So what we're doing in this country since 18C came in is weakening people, making victims and making them dependent. Because as I said, if I'm talking negatively about someone, people are learning about me, not about them. So long as I've got facts, then they will, and then they have a choice to make. My opinion is just that. It's my opinion. So when I say Anthony Albanese is dishonest, I can tell you about the lies and the cover-ups he's got. We get tangled, even worse, in interpretations when we try to ascertain intent and feeling, and that's what this bill does. It tries to imagine someone's feeling. It gets even worse than that. It gets to perceptions of their feelings. I'll come back to that. John Adams is involved in holding politicians accountable. Says, quote, he said in a text to me and actually to a coalition MP as well, civil liberties are being completely suspended that will prohibit any robust discussion or criticism of important public policy issues such as immigration, multiculturalism, and social cohesion. And I'll add, security and terrorism. He has a second quote. If the choice is between freedom and multiculturalism, which is how the ALP is framing this debate, most Australians want to be free. Multiculturalism is destroying our Australian way of life and our Australian ethos. Let's move on to the second part, the guns. Buybacks are not effective. Honest firearm users, guns, are already off the streets. They're locked in bloody safes, whether it be on a farm, whether it be on a home in a suburb or a home in the city, an apartment in the city. They're off the street. People will surrender useless, defective guns, but not good guns. Criminals, terrorists, will not surrender any guns. So we're disarming the good people and making sure that the arms of the terrorists continue. One Nation will not support law-abiding firearms owners being punished, being scapegoated for Labor's failure to implement laws stopping anti-Semitism. We already have laws against anti-Semitism. We have laws against hate. In 2010 and 2016, I'll talk more about them soon. Labor has failed to implement them. Labor has failed to implement them. The first laws came in 2010, as I said, not one prosecution. Second tranche of laws came in 2016, not one prosecution. Yet recreational shooters are being punished. The cost to the state and federal taxpayers for implementing this gun buyback is billions. It's supposed to be 1 billion, supposedly by the Commonwealth government, but it'll be much more than that, according to experts. During a cost of living crisis, several states and territories have already said they won't participate. It adds to the bureaucratic nightmare of small businesses. There are certain aspects of this guns registry, federal registry, that are useful, and certain aspects about their checking. But they can do that without forming the federal registry. They can do that without forming without enacting this legislation. Small businesses are already collapsing. Small businesses will collapse even at a higher rate because gun shops will be going out of business. It is so unfair and un-Australian to punish the majority of people because of the breaches of law, criminal activities of a few, actually a couple. And merging the two bills, anti-Semitism, combating anti-Semitism, and guns, is ridiculous and has got no merit. It's just a political trick. The bill is flawed. The Attorney General and the ASIO head can recommend listing a group as a prohibited hate group, yet the minister can ignore it, as they have been ignoring good advice on security. And they do so because their electorates of many senior ministers in the Anthony Albanese Labor government are Muslim, Islamic foothold. There's no obligation in this bill for ministers to act, to list a group, none. And so it can be very much a partisan approach, because they can control their opponents and let their supporters go free. It does not mention anti-Semitism. Get this, I've checked. The bill does not mention anti-Semitism. Apart from the title and the page footnotes, and wherever the bill title appears as a reference in the bill. Anti-Semitism is not mentioned apart from that. Religion is excluded from the bill. The hate crime is defined with no reference to religion. Not to Jews, not to Muslims, not to Christians, not to anyone. This is misinformation. The title is misinformation. I think it's page 11 and 12 if you want to have a look at the definitions. The bill has retrospectivity provisions to prosecute hate crimes that occurred before the new law and other aspects. Retrospectivity. We don't like retrospectivity. Why are they prosecuting them now? It's an offense, even if a person, you'll be stunned at this one. I was blown away. It is an offense under this bill if a person is not feeling intimidated or fearful, yet if a reasonable person is deemed to feel intimidated and afraid by someone else, they can have 5 years jail. So the judges could concoct that you may not be afraid, but someone, a reasonable person, a member of your group, your ethnic group, nationality group, your racial group, is intimidated or feels fearful. This removes the fear and lowers it to feeling apprehensive about something, not even fear-based. How you can prove intent is beyond me. The racial vilification offense, denigrating or superiority, yet not feeling afraid. And yet you can be guilty if you've said something that a judge or someone else would concoct, a reasonable person would feel afraid or be apprehensive. This is hideous. We're getting into undefinables, and that's not the way the law should be. There are so many changes made to other bills in the country. It's very difficult to read. Legislation should not be there to trap people. It should be there so that everyone can understand it and know their responsibilities in our society to comply with it as a way of respecting other people. How can you have respect for the law when the people can't even understand it? And by the way, people can hate without the intent to harm physically. It's absurd that anyone thinks they can stop hating. And by the way, in my own experience, hate hurts the hater more so than the person being hated. But that doesn't stop terrorists. So we still need something. But we have got something. We've had it for years. We just need to enforce it. Had a brief team meeting this morning where we raised this issue. I value my team. They're young. Some of them are older. Really very broad experience. As I've said before, the hate bill of 2010 has been around for 16 years. No one's been prosecuted. The hate crimes bill of 2016, no one prosecuted. 2026 widens the scope, lowers the bar, gives ministers more discretion and power and less accountability. This is a recipe for punishing political opponents and innocent people and shutting down free speech, shutting down speech that might be critical of the government. Hate crimes are a threat of violence. Racial vilification is including talk about superiority. In the Queensland Olympics coming up in 6 years, African Americans from the West Indies and from the United States have blown people away when it comes to sprinting. Hopefully GATGAT will take care of that. But that's fact. They produced the majority of good sprinters. Africans have provided winners of long distance running events for year after year after year. Is it racial vilification to talk about that? That's fact. And as I said a minute ago, fear is no longer the bar, creating fear in someone. Apprehension of fear is now the bar. If you do something, even if someone, the person you're talking about or to, is not apprehensive, not fearful, if someone concocts that, constructs that someone, a reasonable person, would feel apprehensive, you're gone. Up to 5 years, gone. Jail. Then there's strict liability. The intent no longer matters. So strict liability, even if you didn't intend to do something, if you've done it, then you're liable, and that's a criminal offense. Many civil matters are now, under this law, will be criminal, with up to 5 years jail time. The Commonwealth Criminal Code has been altered, will be altered if this goes through. Discussing history will become illegal under this bill, could become illegal, aspects of it. There were calls to violence in Christianity in the past. Christianity, though, was reformed and took out the incitement to violence. Christians tolerate other religions, all religions. There's a weakness, though, because Islam does not fit Western civilization. Nonetheless, Christians do not force others to convert. And then, as I talked about early on, they want to ban gel blasters, which are regulated toys. I mean, this is bloody ridiculous. They're already regulated, as my understanding. So, but they want to ban gel blasters. Combating anti-Semitism, hate and extremism bill does not mention anti-Semitism, as I said, apart from the title, and the title of the bill appears on 138 pages, and wherever it's referenced within the bill as a title. That's all. It doesn't mention the word Muslim. It doesn't mention the word Islam. The word Jew appears once, sort of twice. On page 26, if you go there, in a note, it says example. Literally, it says example. Inciting anti-Semitic hatred against Jews, that's one word, in a public place where a reasonable member of the Jewish community, that's the other appearance of the word Jew, would be intimidated or fear violence. That's it. And the word anti-Semitic appears 5 times in the bill. And note number 1 on page 47 says anti-Semitic statements are an example of statements. This is the definition. Anti-Semitic statements are an example of statements that involve harmful ideas based on superiority over or hatred of other person on the basis of ethnic origin, as mentioned in subparagraphs D1 and E1. So let's look at the definition of anti-Semitic, definition of Semitic in the dictionary. I've put this in small print, unfortunately. The word Semitic means relating to or denoting a family of languages that includes Hebrew, Arabic, and Aramaic, and certain ancient languages such as Phoenician and Akkadian, constituting the main subgrouping of the Afro-Asiatic family. Relating, and the second definition is relating to the peoples who speak Semitic languages, especially Hebrew and Arabic. Doesn't mention the word Jew. Doesn't mention it. The word Islam is not appearing in the bill at all. Pipe bombs are not mentioned in the bill. Here's the competition I told you about, the test, a little test I've got for you. I'm going to discuss an ideology. I'm going to try not to name it. I want you to identify it. Just share. I'm just going to discuss the traits of this ideology and the consequences of the ideology. Once you think you know the ideology, say so. This word is an ideology, a way of structuring society. That's what this thing is. Number one, it's an ideology. Number two, it's based on control and it's punitive. And number three, it goes against Australian values and Western values. This is an ideology, a way of structuring society, just like communism, socialism, and Nazism. Number two, as I said, it's based on control, violence, punitive control. It uses control of thought, belief, and action using fear and violence. It's punitive, it's cruel, it uses cruel physical punishments. For example, female genital mutilation, suppressing women, killing non-believers, killing gays, beheading people, caning, throwing off buildings, beating wives. It goes against Australian values. Have you got any idea what it is so far? It goes against Australian values and Western civilization. It's not compatible with Western society. It's not compatible with a civilized society. There's an Iranian revolution appearing to start in 2026. Iranians want civilization. They want progress. They want to get rid of this ideology. So-called progressives, though, are praising this ideology in the West. They're really regressive. It's already smashing the United Kingdom. Parts of Paris are hellholes, and the police won't go in there. Stop calling it what it is not. It's not a religion of peace, when it is an ideology of control, punitive control rooted in fear, holding fear over people. Tell the truth. Stop pandering to political correctness. Call it for what it is. Tell the truth. Stop immigration of people who follow this ideology. Protect Australian values, culture, and laws. Tell people the truth. Enforce the law and deport criminals. Deport extremists pushing this ideology. Tell the truth. Enforce the law. Support our police. It starts with telling the truth. I'm going to quote from Richard Dawkins. I don't agree with everything Richard Dawkins says, so I make that up front. But these two things. Something you can convert to is not a race. This is an ideology. It's not a race. Second quote, a statement of simple fact is not bigotry. I was going to read from Adam Crichton's article in the Australian. It's a wonderful article. Adam's a young guy. He's the chief economist at the Institute of Public Affairs. He has been in other positions. He's a damn good author, very, very switched on, precise. He's been fantastic in COVID, fantastic in holding the climate fraudsters accountable. He was the News Corp's Washington, D.C. correspondent in America, and he's now the chief economist of the IPA. Look, it's getting on. We've covered a lot of ground, so I won't read his article, but I really recommend it. You can see I went through reading his article, and I highlighted the key parts, and I highlighted every paragraph. It is a first-class article. I want to also say that perhaps arguably the biggest phobia in the country right now is Anglophobia, the British Empire phobia. The British weren't perfect, but they gave us a hell of a lot that we can be happy for. Anglophobia is a phobia, denigration of, well, they call it here, Anglophobia, the unrecognized hatred. It's the denigration of anything British, anything that came out of British. British gave us Western civilization. They weren't perfect, but they were damn good, and they really moved the human progress bar along. So the conclusion I've come to is drop this bill. Don't even push it any further. Just drop it. Maybe consider cutting it down to prescribed hate groups. But even that's not really needed, because if people have a tendency to break the law or a desire to break the law, gone. Send them out of the country. Deport them. Has anyone worked out, Ryan, the ideology?
Yeah. A couple of good guesses for the Labor Party.
Okay. Now, as I said, some things I do ad lib, some things I do from a script. It just depends how much ground we want to cover. I found that it's far quicker to just to go from a script because you can cover a lot more ground, more disciplined way. Staff meeting this morning. The couple of the staff in particular mentioned a few points, and I asked them to put some words down. So here's what we're going. Online censorship. We've heard that the Albanese government might be considering banning Elon Musk's X platform, just as Keir Starmer is doing in the United Kingdom and they're doing in the European Union. So it's interesting that I cannot quote relevant passages of the Quran, as I mentioned, to make the point about religious exemption, because X, YouTube, and Facebook would ban me for sharing hateful content that violates their terms of service. So it's already being censored. Then the under 16 social media ban. Reuters reports the ban on under 16s accessing social media, commencing from December 10th, 2025. It's just commenced just over a month ago, has led to the deactivation, removal, or restriction of approximately 4.7 million accounts across many platforms, including Instagram, Facebook, Snapchat, TikTok, X, YouTube. This figure, I've got someone who, I won't give away too much, but he was heavily involved in one of the platforms and very, very good advisory board member of one of the platforms. He knows what they're capable of doing. This figure of 4.7 million is likely exaggerated, as these platforms close known bots and inactive accounts and are counting that in the total. He goes on, the e-safety commissioner isn't monitoring, or the commissar as I call her, isn't monitoring new signups of platforms. Blue Sky, which has far worse content on it than these platforms, that's Facebook, Instagram, X, Snapchat, TikTok, some social media reports of large numbers of new accounts being opened on Blue Sky, probably true, though not 4.6 million I have seen. Many young people have found ways around the ban, including AI-generated images. The e-safety commissar has opened a technology war that she will not win. She is going to get beaten by these kids. She'll lose. And in the process, she will do enormous damage. This should be something that parents regulate. I also note that sales of books and family games increased over the Christmas period. So some parents have taken up the challenge to involve their children in more real-world activity, which of course they didn't need the government to tell them to do that. These technology platforms have already said that they're capable and they're on the way to building protection for parents to exercise control and protect their kids. But now the government's got to come in and do it. Okay, that's the end of my formal part. I've only got time now for 3 questions, but I told you it would be a long one. This is a dog of a bill, this combating anti-Semitism, hate, and extremism. But anyway, any questions?
From CRFL Oz, the hate speech bill is terrifying. It's a Trojan horse for outright control.
That's a very, very accurate and fine and strong statement. That is perfect. It's a Trojan horse. It is a Trojan horse. While you're looking at it, they're slipping out the back and infesting controls throughout this country. This is a Trojan horse, and it's horrific.
From Chad Hayes. So there have been some comments by some Indigenous groups on Facebook that they will try and manipulate the hate speech bill to use it to stop Australia Day celebrations on the 26th of January. Yet the question must be asked, is calling Australia Day Invasion Day classed as hate speech?
Well, my opinion, it's not. It's free speech. Call it what you want. If some people want to call it an Invasion Day for political purposes, call it that. You don't have to take any notice of it. You cannot give offense, but you can only take offense. So that's only them expressing their wishes. But that's a good point you raise. And there's one, I can certainly say yes to something, and that is that various groups will use this politically. They will use this the whole of this bill is politically motivated. It doesn't do anything to combat anti-Semitism, doesn't do anything to combat Islamic extremism and Islamic terrorism. Hate preaching does nothing to do that. But it puts in place other restrictions, censorship, and stopping political opponents.
From Flexo C, I honestly think the Royal Commission should be on extremism and national security. This Labour government has panicked and they don't know what to do, and neither does Susan Lee, it seems.
Agree with you on all counts. The Royal Commission must come first, get the data, and it must cover all topics. The Royal Commission must cover the safety of Australians and what are the threats to that safety. That is a government's number one responsibility, the safety of its people. And that's all we've got. If you can, thank you very much. Yeah, we'll have to call it quits there. So that's the weekly wrap up from the only opposition party, the true opposition party, the sensible party, the only party listening to and serving the Australian people. Have a great weekend.